Okay, Colorado football. And in this report about Colorado football, it says that Deion Sanders, and again, you're quoting former players who said runs a program that includes fights, guns, and money. And I know there's a lot of us that read that and go, "Hey, welcome to big time college football." Right? Fights, guns, and money. And there's also lots of talk about bullying, bullying. And some of it even being blamed on his son Shiloh, who's of course of a defensive back with other players. It's not a pretty picture. But what happens is, and look, I'm learning a lot of this as I go as new head coach as well. When you get America's attention, and we can agree or disagree on the state of Colorado's program or what their season was like last year or whatever, they got a lot of attention. And attention does have a substantial value. I would say up until we really, really got to where we were concerned with who was going to win a championship, who was going to play in the SEC championship, or the fact that the SEC might only have one team in the playoff, or the Pac-12, and who those Pac-12 teams would be, and Washington's emergence, Oregon's emergence, USC falling apart last year, Michigan, the Connor Stallion story, which by the way got reinvigorated over the weekend and into today. Like until we got to that place, all we talked about in college football last year was Colorado. So we talked about them a ton. But with that attention can come negativity, and this is part of it. Now, disgruntled former players, they're not always going to say everything and always tell bad tales. But if we're reasonable, we know, hey, if you run dudes off and you're constantly having a cycle of guys there for a minute, guys not there for a minute, they may tell the exact same story as somebody else, but you can paint it in a more negative light. So I'm giving Deion sort of the benefit of the doubt. Okay. But the problem is, and look, I live in this world. I know what's available out there. Okay? I know what's available out there. And I'll give you an example of a decision that I made in my own program. Okay? When I got the job late. Right? I got the job in May. Most of the jobs are mid to late March to early April. So while there were still players out there, for example, right now I have one scholarship available. My school starts September 4th, later than others. So we can hold on to that scholarship, and there may be somebody who gets out of theirs, becomes available, whatever, just to make sure. Right? I have one scholarship. But with that one scholarship, I know that the most talented players that are in the portal currently, several of them, I'll get a note, hey, there is some baggage there. What's the baggage? And there was a point guard who at one point in time I was recruiting, and he had a felony. And that felony was for vehicular manslaughter. It was several years ago. He got behind a wheel. He had, at some point in time, it wasn't drinking. It wasn't illicit drugs. I believe it was marijuana. He had marijuana in his system, and he got into a car accident and killed a woman, and he was going 90 and a 35. And everything about the rest of his record, was completely clean. We talked to his high school coach, his high school academic advisor. I talked to his AAU coach. I talked to people who were on his AAU team. I talked to the coaches who originally signed him in college. And I talked to both of the junior colleges that he went to. I talked to players. I talked to coaches. I talked to the player himself several times over. And I had very, very little doubt that this young man was a good dude who just made a terrible mistake. Terrible mistake. And I'm somebody who got a second chance for nonviolent crime, but still not proud of it in any way. So I love being a guy who you get to know people, you get to meet people, and you want to give them a second chance. But man, I wasn't ready to be that guy with this particular player with this particular crime. And thankfully for him, he ended up finding a really good place, and I hope he does well. The point of it is that when you're, I don't want to say flying by the seat of your pants, and you're out in the portal and you're just looking at tape and you're just going to get players, you will miss some key elements to it, which is character does matter. And believe me, for example, the player I recruited, I actually think he has good character. I do. One of my issues with taking him wasn't just the felony and having to explain that to people, but it was also that I would go through all the hoops of the felony and explain to people and get him. And he's the kind of player, he's higher than our level. Does he even want to be here? And once he is here and he's bought into here, he's gone. I'd much rather have a guy who has no baggage, committed to staying here multiple years, because I have some guys that are going to be here for a year. So I'm not excusing the stories in any way out of Colorado. And what happens with guys like that, this explains why they went south last year. Why, when things got tough and they faced some adversity, why they lost so many close games and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. Because the guys that have the baggage, the guys that are the pains in the asses, the guys that want to fight, the guys that want to smoke, the guys that lack the personal self-discipline, those players, when things go bad, they continue to bring you down. They are not people that fight through that adversity. They're just not. I'm not telling you anything that every coach doesn't know. And when you look in that portal, and I think Deion came in with the mindset of, hey, I'm going to be somebody who I don't have to spend money because people want to come play for me. Because if you come play for me, I know everybody in the NFL, and everybody in the NFL is going to take my word for it, and we'll make you an NFL star. That sounds great. But at the end of the day, they became somebody who, you live too much in the portal. You're getting somebody else's problem, and you're getting a player who only comes there for the attention and for the money, and you're not taking a guy of high character, and this is what happens. None of it matters, by the way, if Colorado wins in what I think is an inferior Pac-12. They should have more talent. They should have a better chance to win, but their schedule in the non-conference is more difficult because it's Nebraska in year 2 on the road, Colorado State great game last on the road. And so they may be better, but they may lose both those games this year coming into a league. And the Big 12 last year was okay. It wasn't as good as the Pac-12, and they got mollywomped in the Pac-12. And what you find in sports is that character matters, especially when you're losing, when those moments of supreme adversity hit you. And last year, it was a mess. This story only doubles down on that. It doesn't mean that that's what it is this year, but it does paint quite a cloudy picture for what's going on at CU. All right, give me your thoughts at Gottlieb Show on social media, at Gottlieb Show. I got a lot to get to today. Man, this is one of those weekends where, though there wasn't, a big NFL game, there wasn't any NFL games, though there's not huge NFL stories, there's lots of other stuff. How about this? It's like real life Grand Theft Auto video game. There's so many distractions with fights, guns, and money floating around. The environment is unlike any I've come around in the locker room before, an unnamed player told Athlon. The publication withheld his name for fear of retaliation. Apparently, Deion Sanders isn't hard to find for guys in the portal. Seems to be hard to find when he's actually at CU.